The empire didn't need her affection. It did not require her trust. But I already wanted both, and I was a man who never left a desire unclaimed. The first thing I felt was the weight of velvet curtains shutting out the daylight. My body ached as though I had been dropped into someone else's life and left there. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The sheets beneath me were crisp, expensive, smelling faintly of smoke and leather. Nothing like the cheap detergent of the motel I sometimes worked in. I sat up sharply. This wasn't my bed. This wasn't even a place I could afford to walk past. Gold-veined marble gleamed on the walls. A chandelier shimmered overhead, and a chilled bottle of champagne waited on the table like a taunt. My breath hitched. Las Vegas. I remembered the flight, the stranger, his shoulder beneath my cheek. And then I saw it, a folder resting neatly on the bedside table, my name stamped across the top. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Photographs spilled out. Me in a white dress, a veil covering most of my face, standing at an altar beside the man from the plane. Vincenzo. My pulse roared in my ears. I had no memory of this. None. The images looked real. Too real. Witnesses in the background applauding. My signature inked on a certificate. My hand, but not. My handwriting, but distorted. No, I whispered, pushing the papers away as if they burned. This isn't possible. I wasn't there. The door opened. He walked in like he owned not just the room, but the air I breathed. Dark suit, eyes sharper than knives, presence filling every corner. Vincenzo Dantes, my stranger, my husband. You're awake, he said smoothly, as if I were simply late to a dinner date. His voice was low, rich, dangerous. I was beginning to wonder if I'd have to kiss you to bring you back to me. I stumbled out of bed, clutching the sheet around me like armor. What is this? These photos? They're fake. I never stood in that chapel. I never said vows. I never signed anything. He took his time crossing the room, each step deliberate. You slept, yes, but you signed days ago. An agreement at the airport, remember? A harmless form. You thought my men were witnesses. The rest was handled. He lifted the folder, tapped the certificate with 2 fingers. On paper, Alice Bandy, you are mine. I'm not. My voice cracked. My throat closed around the denial, but the documents lay like iron shackles between us. You tricked me. This is fraud. It means nothing. He tilted his head, studying me with unnerving calm. In your world, perhaps. But in mine, perception is truth. Every family, every rival, every ally will believe we are bound. That is what matters. I shook my head violently, panic flooding every nerve. You can't keep me here. I'll go to the police. The corner of his mouth curved, not into a smile, but into something sharper. And tell them what? That you fell asleep on a plane and woke up married? That you regret the choice your own signature confirms? You'll look unhinged, naive. No one will listen. No one will save you. Tears stung, hot, and unwanted. I hated that he saw them, hated the power that flickered in his gaze at my weakness. He reached out, caught my chin between his fingers, tilting my face up until our eyes locked. You belong to me now, he murmured, velvet over steel. The sooner you accept it, the easier it will be. I jerked free, heart hammering, chest tight with fury. I will never belong to you. He let me go, stepping back as if he'd heard this declaration 1,000 times before. Yet his eyes lingered, dark fire smoldering. We'll see. In that moment, I realized the bars of my cage weren't steel. They were forged from lies, power, and the truth that no one in this city, or any city, would ever believe me. And worst of all, a part of me feared he was right. Alice's fury was a thing of beauty, raw, unpolished, sparking like flint against steel. She stood in the middle of the suite, clutching the sheet around her, trembling with rage and fear. But all I saw was the fire in her eyes, so fragile, yet unyielding, so breakable, yet unbroken, my perfect contradiction. I poured myself a glass of scotch, ignoring the tremor in her voice as she demanded explanations that no longer mattered. Everything had already been arranged, everything signed, sealed, bound. "You think you can hold me here?" she spat, pacing like a caged animal. "This isn't real. None of it is real." I watched the amber swirl in the glass before taking a slow sip. Reality is perception, Kara, and perception is power. In my world, that makes it real. Her glare was a blade. "I'll prove it. I'll expose you. Someone will. Someone." I let the word hang heavy. Every witness was chosen, every photograph captured, the signatures match. To them, you are Mrs. Dantas. You belong to me, not because of ink or ritual, but because I decided it. She froze, knuckles white against the sheet. The silence between us sharpened. I crossed the room slowly, every step measured, my shadow stretching over hers until she had nowhere left to retreat. My hand brushed the wall beside her head, caging her without touching. Her breath came fast, uneven. She hated me, yet I could feel the pull, an invisible thread tightening, binding us closer with each heartbeat. "You tricked me," she whispered, voice breaking. "You had no right." I lowered my head until my lips were near her ear. "No right? I had every right. You are Bandy blood, the last daughter of a dynasty that refuses to die. Do you think the Moretti or Caruso would have offered you a choice? They would have used you like a pawn, discarded you when convenient. I at least protect what I claim." Her eyes widened at the name, confusion flickering across her face. Bandy. She didn't even recognize that truth would cut deeper. "I'm not yours," she hissed, but her voice betrayed her. A tremor, soft but undeniable, ran through her body as my presence pressed closer. I smirked faintly. "Say what you like. Deny it as much as you want, but you leaned into me on that plane. You sought my warmth before you even knew my name. Your body speaks truths. Your lips cannot." She shoved against my chest, breaking the cage. Though I let her go, she stumbled back, clutching herself with both arms, eyes wild, hatred, fear, and beneath it, something she didn't yet understand. Something I intended to cultivate until it consumed her. I downed the rest of the scotch and set the glass aside. "We leave for Italy tomorrow. There you'll see the world that already considers you. And when you do, you'll understand. Your resistance changes nothing." Her breath caught. "I'll never forgive you for this." I met her gaze, steady and merciless, though inside something restless twisted in my chest. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Al. I'm asking for your surrender. I always get what—" I turned away before I did something reckless, before the temptation to claim her with more than words overcame the control I had built over a lifetime. Tomorrow she would step into my kingdom, and whether she came screaming or silent, she would remain, because I had already chosen, and I feared nothing in this world except losing her before she understood what that meant. Sleep didn't come. Not in that gilded cage of a suite. Not beneath the suffocating weight of forged documents stacked like evidence against me. I paced the carpet until my feet ached, mind clawing at every possibility. Escape, denial, someone to believe me. But every path led back to him, to Vincenzo, to the iron snare he had woven while I slept. Morning came sharp and cruel. Sunlight spilled across the room, but it didn't warm me. I dragged on yesterday's jeans and a wrinkled shirt, daring the luxury around me to choke. My reflection in the mirror looked foreign. Pale skin, haunted eyes, hair tangled like storm wreckage. This was not a bride. This was a prisoner. When I opened the folder again, I studied the signatures. My name sprawled across the certificate, familiar loops and curves, but I knew I hadn't written it. My pulse pounded with panic and fury. Somewhere, somehow, he had stolen my hand and twisted it into betrayal. A copy, a forgery, a trap. I wanted to shred it, burn it, erase it. But even if I did, the truth would remain. The world already believed. The door opened. He stepped inside, perfectly composed, black suit pressed, shirt collar undone just enough to reveal the barest hint of skin. Power poured off him with every movement. I hated that my body reacted. Heat creeping into my cheeks, breath catching. Hatred wasn't supposed to feel like this. "I want the truth," I snapped, gripping the certificate hard enough to wrinkle it. "This isn't legal. I never stood in that chapel. I never said vows. I never gave consent." He leaned against the wall, arms folded, gaze unreadable. "And yet the papers say otherwise. The witnesses confirm it. Photographs immortalize it. Do you think anyone will question the word of Vincenzo Dantas?" "Then it's fraud," I hissed, "which means it can be undone. I'll fight you in court if I have to." A shadow of a smile curved his lips, slow and infuriating. "In court? You think ink and robes will save you? Las Vegas bleeds for men like me. Judges drink my wine. Clerks sign what I hand them. You'd stand alone, screaming at ghosts." My chest tightened, fury burning bright enough to make me shake. "I don't care what power you think you hold. I will not be your wife." He pushed off the wall and crossed the space between us, deliberate and slow until the heat of him was impossible to ignore. He didn't touch me, not yet, but the air itself pressed me back. "Say it again," he murmured. "Tell me what you are not." My throat ached, words scraping raw. "I'm not yours." Something flickered in his eyes. Dark amusement, maybe, or hunger. His hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from my face. A gesture so deceptively gentle that my knees threatened to betray me. "No," he said softly, almost to himself. "Not yet." I shoved his hand away, breath shattering, heart pounding like it wanted to tear free of my chest. The smirk returned, sharper now, as if he thrived on every ounce of resistance I threw at him. "You'll see, Alice," he said, turning toward the door. "By the time we reach Italy, you'll understand. You can fight, you can rage, but every thread leads back to me. You are already bound." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me with the echo of his certainty. I gripped the false certificate until the paper bit into my palms, whispering to myself that he was wrong, that I would never bend. But deep inside, beneath the fury, a traitorous spark flickered. A memory of warmth on that flight, of his shoulder beneath my cheek, of a safety I had no right to crave. I crushed the thought before it could grow, telling myself I hated him, telling myself I would find a way out, even as a part of me already feared I wouldn't. The suite was more than luxury. It was a stage. Every detail, from the silk curtains to the black marble floors, was designed to remind me of the gulf between her world and his, between my world and his. I glared at him as if sheer willpower could dissolve the chains he'd wrapped around me. He loosened his tie and poured 2 glasses of wine, setting one in front of me. I didn't touch it. My fists stayed clenched at my sides, as though striking him might shatter the illusion of control. "Drink," he said simply, lowering himself onto the leather sofa. "It will steady your hands. I don't need anything from you." The venom in my tone cut sharper than I intended. He didn't flinch. "You need everything." "From me," he replied. "Protection, shelter. Even the breath in your lungs is safer under my watch than anywhere. You just haven't accepted it." Her laugh, my laugh, was bitter. "Protection? You mean captivity? You tricked me into this, Vincenzo. You forged everything. You stole my life." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, watching me with deliberate calm. "I secured your life. There's a difference. Do you know what would happen if the Moretti knew who you were? Or the Caruso? You'd be dead before the ink dried on a ransom note." I flinched, though I tried to mask it. He caught the tremor in my shoulders, the crack in my armor. Fear was beginning to edge through the fury. He stood, closing the distance between us. I retreated 1 step, then another, until my back touched the wall. His hand rose, not to seize, but to trace the space beside my cheek, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. My breath hitched, lashes fluttered, defiance burned in my eyes. "You hate me," he murmured, voice low enough to graze my skin. "And yet your pulse tells me something else." "You're imagining," I snapped. He smirked, leaning closer until my vanilla shampoo, soft and unassuming, slid into his lungs. "No, I don't imagine. I take, I claim, I make real what others only dream." My lips parted, whether in protest or something far more dangerous, I couldn't tell. For a heartbeat, the air between us thickened, humming with possibility. He pulled back first, not because he lacked the will, but because he wanted me to feel the absence, the ache of what didn't happen. "You will stay here tonight," he said, stepping away, reclaiming his glass. "Sleep, rage, break things if you like. Tomorrow, we fly to Italy." "You'll never own me," I threw back. He glanced over his shoulder, the faintest smile cutting like a blade. "You already wear my name, Alice. The rest will—" He left me breathless and furious as the suite door clicked shut. The jet descended over Naples like a blade cutting into the horizon. From the window, the coastline spread in glittering fragments, the sea dark and endless. It should have been beautiful, but all I felt was the weight of chains tightening with every mile. Vincenzo hadn't spoken much during the flight. He worked, reading documents, issuing commands in Italian too fast for me to follow. His presence filled the cabin even in silence. I sat across from him, arms folded, forcing myself not to glance at him, not to think of how close he had been the night before, how his nearness had nearly swallowed me whole. When the plane touched down, a fleet of black cars waited. Men in suits moved like shadows, nodding to him with the kind of reverence that turned my stomach. I was escorted into the back seat beside him, pressed against leather and silence, while the city blurred past. No one looked at me twice. To them, I was already his. The gates appeared before I understood what was happening, iron and gold rising higher than I could see, opening to reveal a world hidden from outsiders. The Dantas estate wasn't a home, it was a fortress. The driveway curved through gardens manicured to perfection, statues of marble, fountains spilling water into stone bowls, as though this were paradise. But the guards at every corner told the truth. This was a kingdom, and I was its captive queen. The mansion itself loomed, a palace carved from pale stone, balconies draped in ivy, windows like watchful eyes. My chest tightened as we stopped at the front steps. I had never in my life been anywhere so opulent. For one dizzying second, the orphan in me, always hungry, always reaching, ached at the sight of such wealth. And then I remembered none of it was mine. I was only a possession locked inside its walls. Inside, the air smelled of roses and polished wood. Chandeliers glittered overhead. Marble floors echoed beneath my hesitant steps. Servants bowed as Vincenzo passed, eyes lowered, lips sealed. When their gazes brushed mine, I saw curiosity, pity, fear. They knew who he was, and they believed who I was supposed to be. "This is your home now," Vincenzo said, his voice a velvet decree. "You'll have everything you need." I spun toward him, fury boiling. A gilded cage is still a cage. His mouth curved in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Better gilded than buried. I wanted to scream, to tear down the perfect walls, to run until my lungs gave out. But where would I go? Outside these gates, I was no one. Inside, I was trapped with a man whose power bent the world around him. My nails bit into my palms as I followed him deeper into the mansion. He showed me a bedroom more magnificent than any I had imagined. Velvet drapes, carved oak furniture, a balcony that overlooked the gardens. Dresses hung in the closet, all my size, shoes, jewelry, even perfumes. The sight made bile rise in my throat. He had planned everything down to the detail of what I would wear. He had studied me, calculated me, erased me. When the door closed behind him, I collapsed onto the edge of the bed, fighting tears that threatened to break through. The silence of the room was unbearable. I opened the balcony doors, desperate for air, staring out at the night sky. The stars shone sharp and cold. Beyond the gates, the world lived on, free, unreachable. Somewhere deep inside, I swore I would not be broken. He could dress me in silk, surround me with riches, call me his wife, but I would never give him what he wanted. And yet, as the memory of his eyes on me returned, of his voice murmuring that I belonged to him, a traitorous shiver raced down my spine. I wrapped my arms around myself, whispering into the night, "I'll find a way out. I have to." But even as I said it, the iron gates of the Dantas estate seemed to laugh, as if they already knew the truth, that no one escaped once Vincenzo had decided otherwise. The council chamber smelled of cigars, old wine, and ambition. His capos were gathered around the long mahogany table, their voices low, their eyes sharp, men who had killed, men who had built empires from blood and silence. Every one of them watched as he entered with me at his side. I hesitated in the doorway, my hand curling against my dress, shoulders stiff. I wasn't dressed like the poor girl from the airplane. Silk clung to my figure, chosen carefully by his staff. I looked like I belonged here, even if I didn't believe it yet. I felt the heat of their gazes following me, assessing me, coveting what he had claimed. He let the silence stretch, power grows in silence, then placed a hand on my back and guided me forward, making it clear to all that I stood under his protection and his claim. "This is my wife," he said, voice steady as stone. "Alice Dantas." A murmur rippled through. Some masks slipped. Surprise, suspicion, envy. They had heard whispers, but this was the confirmation. The Dantas family now bound to something more ancient, more dangerous. One of the older men, Carlo, leaned back in his chair, smoke curling from his cigar. "Married in Las Vegas, was it?" "Quick work, Vincenzo." His tone carried weight, curiosity laced with challenge. Vincenzo's jaw tightened, but he allowed himself a thin smile. "The best decisions are made quickly, before anyone else has the chance to interfere." I stiffened at his side, fighting the urge to speak, to protest. He slid his hand lower against my spine, warning me without words. "Not now." Another capo, Rossi, raised his glass in mock salute. "A lovely bride, though fragile. You'll need to guard her well." His gaze lingered on me too long. I sensed, rather than saw, Vincenzo's restraint, a storm, leashed by will. "She is guarded," he said flatly. "Anyone who doubts that is welcome to test it." The table went quiet. Rossi's smirk faded. The meeting dragged on. Territories, shipments, debts collected and owed. Vincenzo gave orders, settled disputes, and reminded every man in the room why he sat at the head of the table. Through it all, I remained silent, though my presence burned brighter than any agenda discussed. When it was over, he rose, pulling me with him. "My wife and I will dine alone tonight." It wasn't a request. Chairs scraped back. Men muttered their farewells. Eyes followed us as we left, some respectful, others hostile, all calculated. The heavy doors closed behind us. I tore my arm free, spinning to face him, my whisper a blade. "You paraded me in front of them like property." He looked down at me, letting the fire in his eyes show. Just enough. "Not property, proof. You are the difference between weakness and dominance in this war, and no one will ever forget whose side you stand on." I shook my head, eyes bright with fury, lips trembling with unshed words. For a moment, he looked as if he might kiss me there, to silence my rebellion was something I would never admit I craved. Instead, he stepped back, keeping control. "You will learn, Alice," he said softly. "In this world, perception is survival. And tonight, you survived." Dinner in the grand hall felt like theater. Long tables stretched beneath glittering chandeliers. Servants moved silently between courses. And every eye that wasn't fixed on Vincenzo seemed to find its way to me. I kept my chin high, though inside I felt small, an imposter draped in silk, sitting beside a man who had stolen my name. The air thickened when another guest arrived late. He walked in with the smooth grace of someone who knew the effect he carried. Matteo Moretti. I recognized the name before I recognized the man. His family had been whispered about during the council meeting, and now here he was, all charm and menace, wrapped in a perfect smile. He approached the table with deliberate ease, his gaze flicking from Vincenzo to me. "Signor Dantes," he greeted, voice polite but edged. Then his eyes settled on me, warm and steady. "And this must be the new bride I've heard so much about." Heat rushed into my cheeks, unwanted. "Alice," I said quickly, as though reclaiming some part of myself by speaking my name aloud. His smile widened. "Alice? Beautiful name." He took my hand before I could pull back, bowing slightly as his lips brushed across my skin. It was old-fashioned, courteous, and calculated. His eyes never left mine, dark with amusement, as though he already knew Vincenzo's temper. Beside me, I felt Vincenzo stiffen. The temperature at the table seemed to drop, though his expression remained carved from stone. Only his hand, gripping his wineglass with dangerous force, betrayed the storm beneath. Matteo released me, finally turning to claim a seat across from us. Conversation resumed, though thinner now, brittle. I tried to focus on the food, delicate courses that tasted of nothing. But Matteo's gaze returned often, lingering too long. I could feel Vincenzo's fury radiating beside me, a silent warning that made the hair rise on my arms. At one point, Matteo leaned forward, speaking over the low hum of voices. It must be overwhelming stepping into this world so suddenly. If you ever need a friend, someone to help you navigate. His words trailed, deliberate, the implication sharp. My pulse stumbled. I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, Vincenzo's hand found my knee beneath the table. His grip was firm, possessive, silencing. I froze, breath caught in my chest as he spoke for me. "My wife requires nothing from anyone outside this family," he said smoothly, but there was steel beneath every syllable. "She is well cared for." Matteo's smile returned, slow and infuriating. "Of course. Still, the offer stands." The rest of the dinner passed in brittle silence. I could barely taste the wine, my skin prickling with tension, caught between the charm of one man and the smoldering wrath of the other. When we finally rose from the table, Vincenzo guided me out with a hand on the small of my back, pressure sharp enough to remind me that I was on a leash. The door to the hall closed behind us. His grip tightened, spinning me to face him in the shadowed corridor. His eyes blazed, colder than ice, hotter than fire. "Do not look at him again," he said, voice low but vibrating with barely contained fury. I shoved at his chest, anger rising to meet his. "I didn't do anything. He was polite, that's all." "Polite?" Vincenzo hissed. "He touched you. He dared put his mouth on you. He will not do it again." His possessiveness struck a chord deep inside me, half fury, half something I refused to name. My pulse pounded, breath shallow. "You don't own me." His hand caught the back of my neck, pulling me closer until our foreheads nearly touched. His voice dropped, rough and ragged. "No, but I will. And men like Matteo will choke on the proof." The words should have terrified me. Maybe they did. But the heat in his eyes, the closeness of his body, ignited something reckless inside me. I hated him. I hated this. And yet my lips trembled with the dangerous urge to close the gap. I tore myself free, breathless, glaring at him with every ounce of defiance I had left. "You're insane." He only smiled, a wolf baring teeth. "Only about you." The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, gold leaf, and the hum of violins. Politicians, businessmen, and criminals disguised in elegance mingled as if they were no different. This was Naples, the heart of his empire, and tonight every eye would be on us. I walked at his side, radiant in silk, my hair swept into a crown of dark. I looked like a queen, though my expression betrayed the storm. Defiance clung to my perfume. I could feel it with every step. Then he appeared, Matteo Moretti, cutting through the crowd with his easy smile and tailored suit. His bow to Vincenzo was shallow, perfunctory, but when he turned to me, his charm sharpened to a point. "Signora Dantis," he greeted, extending a hand. "You look exquisite this evening. May I?" Before Vincenzo could speak, before he could forbid it, I hesitated and then placed my hand in Matteo's. Fury roared through Vincenzo, silent but consuming, as Matteo led me onto the dance floor. We moved to the music, my steps careful, his confident. He leaned closer, whispering something that made my lips tighten, though I did not pull away. Around us, eyes watched, whispers spread. It was a performance, and Matteo knew it. Every turn of the dance was an insult carved into Vincenzo's pride. He let it last exactly long enough to be noticed. Then he crossed the floor, the crowd parting instinctively. The violins swelled, but the music dimmed beneath the thunder in his blood. When he reached us, he didn't ask. He didn't speak. He seized my hand, pulling me free from Matteo's grip, and in the same breath drew me against him. His mouth crashed onto mine, hard and merciless, in the center of the ballroom. Gasps rippled through the crowd, whispers sharpened into a storm. But all I registered was the taste of fire and fury, my lips stiff with resistance, until they weren't. For a fraction of a second, I yielded. For a fraction of a second, my pulse raced to match his. When he finally pulled back, my cheeks burned crimson, eyes blazing with hatred and confusion. His thumb brushed my jaw, a silent claim, before he turned his gaze to Matteo. Matteo stood frozen, smile gone, eyes narrowed with calculated rage. "Touch my wife again," Vincenzo said, voice carrying enough for half the room to hear, "and you'll dance with bullets, not music." Matteo inclined his head, a mockery of respect. "Of course, Vincenzo. Forgive my enthusiasm." His tone dripped venom, but he stepped back, conceding the moment. Vincenzo led me from the floor, my body rigid against his. I hissed under my breath, "You humiliated me." "No," he corrected, voice low, teeth gritted. "I saved you, from him, from every man here who thinks he can take what's mine. They needed to see, and now they have." My eyes glittered with unshed tears, fury spilling over. "I am not yours." We stopped in the shadow of the marble columns. He turned my face toward his, forcing me to look at him. "You are, not because of papers or photographs or even vows, because I decided it, because I will protect you from everything, even yourself." I trembled, torn between hatred and something else I refused to name. His grip softened, a dangerous tenderness slipping past his armor. "Stay close to me, or I swear I'll burn this entire city to keep you in my sight." The ride back from the ballroom was suffocating. City lights flashed across the tinted windows, but silence screamed louder than any words. My hands trembled in my lap, not from fear, at least that's what I told myself, but from the memory of his mouth on mine, under 100 chandeliers, while the world watched. When we reached the estate, I stormed ahead, silk skimming marble, anger snapping at my heels. He followed, inevitable as a shadow. I spun in my room to face him. "You had no right," I shouted, voice ricocheting off gilded walls. "No right to drag me onto that floor, to put your mouth on mine like a trophy you'd won." His jaw tightened, eyes blazing. "No right? You think I'd stand by while Matteo paraded you across that room? He touched what is mine. He used you to provoke me," I answered. "I am not yours," I screamed, chest heaving. "Do you hear me? I will never be yours." He closed the distance in 3 steps, trapping me against the wall, palms braced beside my head. His breath was hot, his voice rough. "Say it again. Look me in the eyes and say it while your heart hammers like this." My pulse betrayed me, a drum I couldn't silence. "I hate you," I managed, shaking. His gaze dropped to my mouth, hunger burning through fury. "Good," he whispered. "Hate me, hate only me. As long as every thought, every breath, every fire in you belongs here." My hands pushed at his chest once, twice, the second time hard enough that he stepped back. Tears burned, but I held my ground. "You will not own me, not my mind, not my heart." For a heartbeat, something softened in his eyes. Dangerous, disarming. "You already live in my heart, Alice," he said hoarsely, "whether you want to or not." He turned away before I could answer. "Sleep," he ordered, the iron gone from his voice. We'll speak no more of this tonight." When the door shut, I slid to the floor, palms to my lips, furious at the memory of him, at the part of me that hadn't pushed him away fast enough. "I will not break," I whispered to the empty room. But the echo of his words hunted me. "You already live in my heart." The study smelled of smoke and leather when Matteo arrived, as if he were a guest, not a provocation. "You put on quite a show," he drawled, smooth as silk, edged with steel. "Kissing your bride in front of everyone. Dramatic, even for you." "You touched her," Vincenzo said flatly. "That was your first mistake." Matteo feigned innocence. "Touched? I danced. Courteously. Someone had to make her feel welcome." Vincenzo crossed the room in a blur, seizing him by the collar, slamming him into the wall. "Say her name again," he hissed. "I'll carve the word from your tongue." Matteo's laugh was breathless, taunting. "Careful. If you kill me here, half the city will smell blood and know you spilled it over a woman." Rage trembled in the air, then leashed itself. Vincenzo released him with a shove. Matteo smoothed his jacket. "You claim her loudly, but she looks at you like a prisoner, looks at her captor. Possession isn't devotion, and devotion is harder to steal." He left with the stink of challenge, and Vincenzo stood alone, breathing hard, haunted by a truth he refused to accept. She was the only thing that could destroy him. Night fell sharp with salt and stone. I crept through the corridors, counting patrols, memorized turns a lifeline in my throat. Freedom waited beyond iron and gold, if I could reach it. My hand found the side latch. Hope sparked. "Leavin' so soon?" Matteo stepped from the shadows, tie loosened, smile like a blade. I froze. "I just need to breathe," I managed. "He forged everything, trapped me. You know this isn't real." His head tilted, sympathetic only in shape. "Oh, I know, and I know how to undo it. Come with me. Paper burn. Witnesses disappear. Freedom can be bought if you choose the right buyer." The word belong scraped my nerves raw. For a flicker, hope tried to bloom, then died when I saw the hunger in his eyes. Not for me, for the war I represented. "You don't care about me," I whispered. "You just want to hurt him." Matteo didn't bother to lie. "Does it matter? You want out. I want him ruined. Our goals align. My life isn't a weapon you get to wield." I stepped back, breath unsteady. He caught my wrist, voice velvet over venom. "Don't be foolish, Alice. He'll destroy you. I'll at least let you live while I take everything else." I ripped free, heart slamming. "I'd rather take my chances with him than be your prize." His smile cooled to something lethal. "Brave girl. Let's see how long that lasts." He disappeared into the dark, and I closed the latch with shaking hands, retreating into the cage I thought I hated, choosing, for now, the devil I already knew. The sound of the latch echoed down the corridor, faint but telling. I had been in my office when the report reached me. A guard saw movement near the side entrance, too careful, too deliberate to be coincidence. My blood went cold, then hot. Alice. I found her outside her chamber, breathless, eyes wide as if she'd seen a ghost. She froze when she spotted me, and in that instant I knew she had tried to run. Rage surged, sharp and poisonous, not at the attempt, but at the thought of her out there, unguarded, within reach of wolves like Matteo. "You tried to leave," I said, voice low, a verdict, not a question. She yanked against my grip, fire sparking in her eyes. "I will not be your prisoner." I had to try. I dragged her back, pressing her against the stone wall, my palm braced beside her head, my body caging hers. close enough to feel the hammer of her heartbeat. Do you have any idea what would have happened if you made it past those gates? Moretti, Caruso. They'd tear you apart piece by piece just to hurt me. Is that what you want? I want my life back, she shouted, voice cracking, eyes bright with tears. I want to breathe, without your shadow suffocating me. I want to be free. Her words sliced deeper than she knew. For a moment, I almost faltered. Almost. Then I heard Mateo, in her defiance, and my fury returned like fire to dry timber. You spoke to him, I growled, every muscle taut. Did you think I wouldn't know? Mateo doesn't offer salvation. He would use you, discard you, and laugh while I bled. He doesn't want you. He wants to destroy me, and you nearly handed him the blade. Her lips trembled, but her chin lifted, proud even in fear. Better him than you. Something feral ignited in me. My hand caught her jaw, tilting her face up, forcing her to meet my gaze. Lies, I hissed. Spit them all night, but your body betrays you, even now. Her breath stuttered. Her chest rose fast against mine. I leaned closer. Tell me you don't feel it, Alice. Tell me your pulse doesn't race when I touch you. Tell me you don't burn with the same fire that's devouring me. She shoved me, fists against my chest, striking not to wound, but to survive the storm inside her. A ragged cry tore from her throat, half sob, half scream. I caught her wrists, pinning them to the wall, lowering my forehead to hers. Hate me, curse me, I rasped, but don't you dare give yourself to him. You're mine, Alice, even if it kills us both. We stayed locked there for a breathless eternity, her trembling against me undone by her scent, her fire, her tears. Then I tore myself away, control hanging by a thread. Dream of escape, I muttered, voice hoarse. But understand this, you'll never run far enough. I left before I crossed the line between fury and madness. It happened fast, too fast. One moment I was pacing my chamber, nerves raw from Vincenzo's fury. The next, the balcony doors shattered inward. Masked men stormed through like shadows with knives. My scream ripped free before a gloved hand clamped over my mouth. Quiet, one hissed in accented Italian, or we break you before we deliver you. Rope bit into my wrists. They dragged me toward the balcony. The night air reeked of gunpowder. Someone had silenced the guards. They shoved me into the back of a van. Silk snagged, fabric tore. The engine roared, tires screeched. I slammed against cold metal, wrists burning. Why are you doing this? I choked. What do you want from me? The leader turned, mask lifted just enough to show a grin that iced my blood. You, your leverage. Caruso will pay to see Dante's crawl. The name sliced through me. I was no longer a pawn in Vincenzo's game. I was a weapon in theirs. Hours blurred. The van halted. An abandoned warehouse swallowed us. Rust, mold, shadows. They tied me to a chair, rope cutting deeper into skin already raw. The door creaked open. Mateo stepped inside. My stomach dropped. He didn't bother with a mask. Hello, Alice, he said smoothly. You look frightened. Don't be. You're safe now. Safe? My voice broke. You're with them. He crouched, eyes gleaming. Vincenzo doesn't deserve you. With me, you'll have freedom. His fingers brushed a strand of hair from my face, mock gentle. But first, he has to bleed. Tears burned. I jerked away. You don't care about me. You just want to use me to destroy him. His smile sharpened. Perhaps, but be clever. Align with me and live. Be the reason he falls, and I'll make sure you survive to see it. Revulsion twisted my gut. For all his lies, for all his chains, I had never felt like meat tossed to wolves with Vincenzo. I would rather die than betray him, I said. For the first time, Matteo's smile faltered. He stood, pacing, voice a hiss. "Careful, Bella. Vincenzo may have chained you, but I can break you." Fear shook me, but I held his gaze, clinging to one desperate hope, that Vincenzo would come. The call reached me just past midnight. My guard breathless, words clipped with panic. "They have her." I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. Caruso. And Matteo's stink all over it. Rage sharpened me to a blade. I armed myself. Gun, knife, enough ammunition to end an army. My men scrambled, but I didn't wait. This wasn't a mission. It was war. And Alice was the only prize worth fighting for. The warehouse hunched over the harbor, broken windows leaking pale light. 2 guards outside, cigarettes glowing. They never saw me coming. A blade opened the first. A bullet ended the second. Inside, rust, gasoline, voices. I followed the sound to her, tied to a chair, wrists raw, tears streaking, eyes defiant. Matteo stood over her. "Last chance," he purred. "Choose me and live. Defy me, and I'll leave you in pieces for him to find." I moved before he could touch her. My gun thundered twice. Caruso men dropped. Chaos erupted. Shouts, gunfire, bodies falling. Alice screamed. Matteo spun. I fired. The bullet grazed his shoulder, spinning him back. He cursed and retreated into the shadows as his men dragged him away. Coward. Another time. I cut down the last of them. Blood sprayed the concrete. When silence finally fell, broken only by Alice's ragged breath, I dropped the gun and ripped the ropes from her wrists. She collapsed against me, shaking, sobs tearing free. I wrapped my arms around her, fierce, instinctive. "It's over," I whispered raw. "You're safe. I've got you." She shook her head, words fractured by tears. "I thought you wouldn't come. I thought—" My hand cupped her cheek, forcing her to meet my eyes. "Never. Do you understand me? Never. I would tear this city apart, stone by stone, before I let them keep you." Something in her gaze shifted, more than fear. I didn't wait. I couldn't. I kissed her, desperate, devouring, pouring every ounce of rage, terror, need into the press of my mouth. She stiffened, then melted, arms clinging as if she believed it at last. That I was her only shelter in this world. The taste of her was salt and fire, tears and defiance, life itself. When I pulled back, her lips were swollen, her breath unsteady, her forehead resting against mine. "You're insane," she whispered. "You'll get yourself killed." "Then I'll die with your name on my lips," I said, fierce and certain. "But as long as I breathe, no one will take you from me." I lifted her into my arms and carried her out, over the bodies of men who had dared touch what was mine. My men cleared the path, but I barely saw them. I saw only Alice, her face buried against me, tears soaking my shirt. I had never feared death. Tonight I learned the truth. I feared a world without her. The ride back to the estate was a blur. Every jolt of the car rattled through me. But it wasn't only fear that trembled in my bones. It was the memory of his kiss, fierce and desperate, in the middle of blood and chaos. By the time we reached the mansion, dawn was pinking the sky, a cruel contrast to the night I had survived. Guards whispered as Vincenzo carried me inside, their eyes wide at the sight of their boss with a woman cradled in his arms. He didn't set me down until we were in his study. The door thudded shut behind us. His gaze dropped to my wrists, raw and red, and his jaw tightened. "I should have killed him," he growled, pacing like a caged animal. "Matteo, Caruso, every last one." "You didn't," I said softly, exhaustion dragging at me, but something burning hotter inside. Because you wanted me back more than you wanted revenge. His head snapped toward me, eyes blazing. Yes, because nothing matters more than you. The words twisted inside me, sharp with contradiction. Part of me wanted to believe them. The rest remembered forged papers and stolen vows. Why? My voice broke. Why trap me in a life I never asked for? He stopped, silence hanging like smoke. When he finally spoke, his mask had fallen. Because you're not just anyone, Alice. You are Bandi blood, the last daughter of Salvatore Bandi. You were born into this world whether you wanted it or not. And I needed you. The floor tilted beneath me. Bandi, the name he had whispered before. My father, a ghost I had never known. You knew, I whispered. You knew who I was all along. That's why you sat beside me on that plane. That's why you did this. Yes, he said, without flinching. I orchestrated everything. The flight, the witnesses, the signatures. I built a web so tight you could never slip free, because if I didn't claim you, someone else would. And I would not allow that. Tears blurred the edges of the room. You stole my life. He dropped to one knee, reaching for my hand. His fingers trembled. I saved it. Do you think I don't know what I did? That it was cruel? I would rather chain you to me than bury you because of them? I can live with your hatred, Alice. I cannot live with your absence. You don't love me, I said, ripping my hand away. You love control. You love winning. I'm just another conquest. His eyes flashed, no arrogance, no smirk. Only a raw, broken truth. No, you are the only thing I've ever feared losing. That is not conquest. That is devotion. The room spun. My breath came shallow. I wanted to scream, to strike him, to collapse into him. I can't forgive you, I whispered. Not for this. Not now. He didn't rise. He watched me as a man watches salvation and execution both. Then hate me, he said quietly. But stay. I turned away before he could see how much of me already belonged to him. Despite everything, before he could see that the truth of that terrified me more than his lies. For days I had commanded men, stared death down without blinking. But facing Alice's tears, her recoil from my touch, I felt something I had never permitted. Fear, not of enemies, not of war, but of her walking away from me, even only in her heart. I had let her leave the study because if I forced her again, I would lose more than her body. I would lose the fragile thread I was still trying to weave. Now I stood in my chamber, watching Naples glitter beyond the windows, and my empire felt hollow. I didn't hear her until she stood in the doorway, barefoot, wrapped in silk, face pale but steady. She didn't speak, neither did I. The silence between us was heavier than gunfire. Finally, I exhaled. I've built my life on fearlessness. Every man who crossed me learned I'd face him without hesitation. I've looked down the barrel of guns, bled on these streets, buried people I loved. Nothing broke me until you. Don't say that, she whispered. Don't twist this into something it isn't. I'm not twisting anything. I stepped closer, slow, deliberate, like approaching something wild that might bolt. I orchestrated every step, because once the world saw you, they'd hunt you. And because... The word snagged in my throat, unsteady for the first time in years. Because I wanted you, needed you, and that terrified me more than any enemy. Her breath caught, but she didn't move. Her arms folded tight across her chest, as if holding herself together against my confession. You don't need me, she said. You need control. You need to win. I let out a humorless breath. If this were about control, I would have broken you by now. You'd be silent, obedient, hollow. But I don't want silence. I want you, all of you, your rage, your fire, your defiance. I would rather burn with your hatred than live without your presence. For once, she didn't argue. She only stared, like she saw the monster stripped to bone. I closed the final space between us without touching her. My voice rasped. I fear nothing. Not death, not war, not betrayal. The thought of losing you unmakes me. It is the only thing that keeps me awake at night. Silence pressed in, broken only by our breathing. Her eyes shone, a storm I couldn't read. Her hand lifted as if to touch me, then curled back to her own wrist. The refusal cut. The hesitation gave me something dangerous. Hope. "Vincenzo," she said, voice thin with conflict. "I don't know what to do with this. With you." "Then don't decide yet," I murmured, lowering my forehead until it almost brushed hers, not daring to kiss her. "Hate me. Fight me. Curse me. But stay." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She turned away and slipped back into the corridor without a word. The echo of her steps carved wounds I didn't know how to close. I stood alone, fists clenched, heart raw, and understood for the first time. I had built an empire that could face armies, but one woman, this woman, could destroy me without lifting a finger. I couldn't sleep, not after his words, not after the raw confession that shattered the armor he always wore. "I fear nothing in this world except losing you." They echoed inside me long after I left his chamber, threading through every heartbeat, every ragged breath. For days I told myself hatred was enough, that it was armor, a shield, a weapon. But hatred didn't explain why my body betrayed me whenever he was near. It didn't explain why the memory of his lips in that warehouse still burned against mine. Why my pulse leapt at the sound of his voice. Why part of me longed to believe him. By the time the moon was high and the halls were suffocatingly quiet, I knew I couldn't keep hiding from the truth. My feet carried me to his chamber before I could change my mind. My hand trembled on the handle, but I pushed it open. He was awake, of course he was, standing by the window, shoulders tense, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. His eyes lifted when he heard me, and something in them softened instantly, dangerously. "Alice!" My name in his mouth wasn't a command this time. It was a prayer. I closed the door and leaned back against it, sealing us into a world of our own. "I can't keep fighting like this," I whispered. My voice broke, and I didn't care. "I can't breathe with this war between us." He set the glass aside and moved toward me, slow, wary, as if he feared I might vanish. "Tell me what you want," he murmured, voice rough, "and I'll give it to you. Anything." Tears blurred my sight. "I want—" My chest ached. The truth clawed free. "I want to stop pretending I don't feel this." His breath caught, sharp, audible. In the next heartbeat, he stood before me, his hand cupping my cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear. "Say it again," he demanded softly, desperately. "Say it, Alice." I met his gaze without hiding. "I want you." The words ignited him. His mouth crashed onto mine, not with the violence of possession, but with the urgency of a man starving for too long. I melted into him, fingers fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer because I needed him as much as he needed me. He lifted me as if I weighed nothing, carrying me to the bed without breaking the kiss. The world outside, enemies, lies, betrayals, fell away. There was only us, only the fire that had burned through resistance, through hatred, through fear, until nothing remained but surrender. When his lips trailed to my throat, and his hands traced my skin with reverence and hunger, I didn't resist. For the first time, there was no war inside me, only a single truth. I wanted this. Him. Us. Not because he demanded it, not because he forced it, but because I chose it. Mine, he whispered against my skin, voice ragged, almost broken. Yes, I breathed, the word escaping like a vow. Yours. The night blurred into heat and flame, into a kind of intimacy that bound deeper than any forged signature. Every kiss, every touch, every shiver carved away the walls I had built until I was laid bare in his arms. I hated that it felt like coming home. I hated that I didn't hate it at all. When it was over, I lay against his chest, our breaths tangled, my heart racing with what I could no longer deny. His hand traced slow circles on my back, his lips pressed into my hair, as if he had no intention of letting me go. And for once, I didn't want him to. I should have been terrified of what it meant. Instead, all I felt was the ache of inevitability. Somewhere between fury and fire, I had fallen, and there was no escape left in me. The night reeked of smoke and gunpowder. Naples burned in fragments as alliances cracked and blood debts came due. The Moretti moved, emboldened by Caruso's desperation, and at the center stood Matteo, smiling like the serpent he was, waiting for me in the courtyard of my own estate. He had chosen the stage well. My men fought his outside the gates, but here it was only us, with Alice at the top of the marble steps, eyes wide with fear and fury. He had brought the war to her door. Vincenzo, Matteo drawled, his voice carrying in the night. I wondered how long it would take you to step out from behind your fortress. Tell me, does your little bride know how much of this is her fault? I raised my gun, teeth bared. Say her name again, and I'll cut your tongue from your mouth. He laughed, low, venomous. She looks at me differently than she looks at you. She sees a way out. She sees freedom. I moved before he finished, fury detonating in every muscle. We collided in the courtyard's center, steel ringing as his blade met mine. Sparks flew, every strike aimed to kill. Every step was years of rivalry sharpened into obsession. But I wasn't fighting for pride or territory. I was fighting for her. Matteo lunged. His blade grazed my ribs, heat blooming. I didn't falter. I slammed him back, my fist cracking his jaw. Blood sprayed, he staggered. My vision tunneled red, and all I saw was Alice trembling at the top of those stairs, mine to protect. I caught Matteo by the throat and crushed him against the stone. My blade pressed to his chest, point above his heart. He laughed ragged and bloody. Go on, he choked. Kill me. Show her what you are. A butcher, a monster, the same as me. Behind me, Alice cried out, sharp, terrified. Vincenzo, don't! The sound cut deeper than any blade. My grip tightened. Instinct howled to end him. But her voice held me because I didn't care about Matteo's life. I cared about hers. I turned my head enough to meet her eyes. She was shaking, but her gaze was steady, burning through me. If you kill him now, you prove him right, she whispered, voice trembling. Don't let him make you less than what you are. Don't let him take you from me. For a moment the world stilled. My blade hovered, breath sawed in my chest. Matteo's smirk faltered as he realized her words reached me in ways his never could. Slowly I pulled the blade back and released him. He crumpled to the ground, coughing blood, defeated but alive. My men surged forward and dragged him away to be dealt with in quieter, harsher ways. I didn't look at him again. He was already nothing. All my focus was on Alice. I strode towards her, blood staining my shirt, fury still shaking my hands. She met me halfway down the steps, fingers clutching my arms as if to test that I was real, that I was alive. Firelight caught the tears on her lashes. "I thought you would kill him," she breathed. "I thought I'd lose you to the darkness forever." I cupped her face, my thumb brushing her cheek. "I almost did, but you stopped me." Her mouth trembled, part sob, part reluctant smile. "Maybe you do belong to me after all." I kissed her then, not in anger or possession, but with something deeper than either, something I had never given anyone. The courtyard still burned, the city still bled, but for that heartbeat nothing existed except us, bound not by forged signatures or stolen vows, but by the truth neither of us could deny. The gardens of the Dantas estate fell quiet in the weeks that followed. Summer light pooled over marble and roses heavy with bloom. For once, no guards hovered near, no enemies pressed the gates. Peace, fragile, unfamiliar, settled like dust. I sat beneath the old cypress, hands folded in my lap, and pressed my palm to my stomach. The doctor had only confirmed what my body already knew. I carried Vincenzo's child. "I'm pregnant," I whispered to the air, and the words were both impossible and inevitable. Fear and wonder wrestled inside me. I saw the girl I had been, unseen, scraping by, and the woman I was now, seated in a palace, married to the most feared man in Italy, carrying his heir. My fingers curled over the secret I had not yet told him. Would he see this as weakness, or would it undo him the way loving me already had? When I thought of his arms around me, of the night I chose him freely, of the way he lowered his blade at my word, the answer came. He would protect this life with the same fury he used to protect me. For the first time, I didn't feel like a pawn in someone else's game. I felt like the beginning of something new. The breeze stirred the roses. Petals drifted like soft confessions. I closed my eyes and allowed myself a small, secret smile. This was no longer just my story. It was ours. Night brought a stillness I had never trusted. Yet tonight, it felt earned. The war was over. Caruso broken. Moretti scattered. My empire stood unchallenged, and none of it mattered as much as the woman waiting by our window, moonlight silvering her hair. She turned when I entered, hands folded protectively over her midriff. Something in that gesture stopped me cold. "What is it?" I asked, voice rougher than I meant. I crossed the room with a heaviness I couldn't name. "What's wrong?" Her lips trembled. "Nothing is wrong," she said softly, "but everything is changing." Her eyes held mine. The truth surfaced there before the words did. "I'm pregnant." The floor seemed to tilt. My knees gave, not from defeat, but from reverence, from awe I had never allowed myself to feel. I pressed my forehead to her abdomen, hands shaking. A child, our child, proof that I could create instead of only destroy. "I fear nothing," I whispered, voice breaking. "Nothing but losing you. And now," I looked up at her, eyes burning, "now I fear losing both of you. I swear, Alice, I will protect you and this child with everything I am." Her fingers threaded into my hair, gentle and sure. "I don't need you to be invincible," she said. "I need you to be here, with me, with us." I rose and pulled her close. My kiss wasn't fire or fury, it was promise. For the first time, the future didn't terrify me. It called to me. "Thank you for making it to the end. Your presence here means more than you can imagine." Every time you like, comment, or share, YouTube learns this story deserves to reach more people. And that keeps me writing with soul and dedication. If you enjoy the stories I share, please leave a like or a small comment. Even a simple "I'm here" warms my heart. If you're not yet subscribed, it's free, and you can turn on notifications to receive every new story as soon as it arrives. And if it's not too much to ask, share on your social media, or send to a friend who might need something beautiful today. Your help makes a difference. Let's spread love stories in a world overflowing with noise and wounds. Maybe, with a small gesture, we can make this planet a little better. Thank you for being here, and may you always, always feel welcome. The days that followed folded into something I didn't recognize. Quiet. It felt fragile, like glass held between trembling fingers. The forged certificate still existed in drawers and databases, in whispers and rumors, but it had become a ghost in our rooms. Present, yet losing its power every time I chose to breathe, to stay, to let him touch my hand without flinching. One evening, under the pale wash of a Naples dusk, he laid a sealed envelope on the table between us. "The originals," he said. "The photos, the papers, every thread I used to bind you." He didn't reach for me. He only stood there, the most dangerous man in Italy, looking strangely breakable. "Say the word, and I burn them." "Does it change what the world believes?" I asked. "No," he said, "but it changes what I am in this room, with you." The match rested between his fingers, small and solemn. "I will not keep you with a lie." I looked at the envelope that had once been a cage and saw it for what it was now, a choice. I could tell him to set it on fire, to wash the slate clean, to unwind the web until we were strangers again. The idea felt as hollow as a house with no doors. "Keep them," I said softly. His jaw clenched, wounded. Then I touched his wrist and felt the tremor there. "Keep them until we replace them." "Replace?" he repeated, as if testing the shape of a word he didn't dare hope for. "With this," I said, pressing my palm to his chest, to the thunder I'd learned by heart, "with something real." We chose dawn because the city belonged to us then. No crowds, no chandeliers, no watchful eyes thirsty for spectacle. Only the sea turning gold and the bell of an old chapel that hadn't tolled for any family in decades. He walked with me through the courtyard, where his blade had once hovered over a man's heart, where my voice had been enough to call it back. Gardeners paused and bowed from a distance. Guards faded into the hedges and became trees. Inside the chapel, the air smelled of dust and quiet prayers. A priest waited, older than marble and kinder than most saints. He asked no questions that mattered to anyone but us. There were witnesses, 2 women who ran the kitchens and had taught me the names of spices in Italian, and a man whose hands shook when he handed me bread at dawn. They were real in the ways paper never could be. So were we. He didn't touch me until the priest finished speaking. Then his hands lifted, careful and reverent, as if he were afraid I would become smoke. "No empires," I said, throat tight. "No wars, no families. This vow is not leverage." His eyes almost smiled. "No leverage," he promised. "Only truth." He didn't bring rings. He brought a pocket knife. I flinched, then caught myself. Old ghosts knocking bones together. He turned the blade outward, offered the handle to me, and I understood. I nicked his palm first, a bead of scarlet that looked impossible on a man who'd worn whole oceans of blood without blinking. He took my hand and matched the mark, then pressed our palms together, our child between us, like a future we hadn't earned and would spend the rest of our lives deserving. "I choose you," he said, voice unarmored. Not a decree, but a prayer returned to its sender. "Freely, every morning, even when the city forgets how to be kind." "I choose you," I answered, and I felt the last lock in my chest click open. "Freely, every night, even when the past tries to swallow me whole." When we stepped back into the light, Naples was awake. Fishermen calling to one another, vendors rolling up metal grates, pigeons arguing about nothing. The world didn't bow. It didn't need to. We had not changed the city. We had only changed the geometry of the distance between his heartbeat and mine. He kept his promise. The envelope met flame in the courtyard brazier that afternoon. The papers curled and blackened. The photographs blistered and split. The priest's new certificate went into the safe, not as a chain, but as a record of something we already lived. Power remained, but he began to spend it differently. He cut off the Caruso remnants quietly, not with fireworks, but with closures and clean ledgers. He turned Moretti's hunger into a starvation no bullet could cure. No handshakes in the dark, no debts to feed. On. The city felt it. The streets began to choose sleepover sirens. I learned my own power too. Not the sharp kind with edges and orders, but the kind that could bend a room without raising a voice. I met with the women who ran the kitchens, and the books, and the quiet networks of mercy every empire pretends not to need. I discovered that change can be smuggled in, with bread, with jobs that pay on time, with doors that stay unlocked for the right people. He watched me build that invisible kingdom and never once tried to take it from my hands. Sometimes fear still found me at night. Sometimes I woke to the weight of velvet and thought for one horrible second that I was back on a plane, asleep on a stranger's shoulder, life collapsing into a trap I couldn't see. Then his hand found mine under the sheets, warm and human and waiting, and the panic ebbed like tide from rocks. Sometimes rage found him, old adrenaline with nowhere to go, when an old ally tried to test the edges of his new self. Then my voice found him across a room, and the storm changed direction. We learned each other's language by listening to what silenced us. Months passed, marked by the steady drum of a heartbeat that was not mine and not his. We heard it for the first time in a white room that smelled of antiseptic and hope, and he cried without hiding. "He'll have your eyes," he said, "or she'll have your stubbornness." "God help us if she has yours," I answered, and the doctor laughed, and for once the future was not a cliff. It was a road. The night our child came felt like a war fought underwater, soundless and endless and holy. I broke and remade myself around a cry I'd never heard and somehow recognized. He broke too, in a way a man like him never expects. Not a wound, but a surrender. He whispered a name at my temple, one we had chosen together in a garden between roses and promises, and the room became a universe small enough to hold. Later, when the house had gone still, and the city breathed as if it had always planned to, he stood at the window with our daughter asleep against his chest. The moon made a coin on her cheek. He didn't turn when he spoke. I once thought devotion was a chain I could put on someone else. He glanced down at her, awe rearranging the planes of a face that had terrified half of Naples. Now I know it's the vow I wake up to. It's the weight I'm grateful to carry. I came to him and tucked myself into the curve that belonged to me. The chapel had been a vow, the papers a record, the city a stage. But this was the truth. 3 heartbeats, braided. I had been a girl the world did not see. He had been a man who mistook hunger for power. We were neither anymore. Rumors would go on living their noisy lives, that he'd stolen me, that I'd tamed him, that the Dante's crown had softened, that Naples was safer or weaker or simply different. Empires run on the stories other people tell. Families do not. Families run on the stories we choose to live inside. In time, the gates felt less like a border and more like a threshold. We crossed them often, to the market where the bread man's hands no longer shook, to the harbor where fishermen had learned our daughter's name and slipped her tiny silver charms for luck, to the chapel that smelled of dust and promises, where we lit candles for the dead and for the living, and for the versions of ourselves we had outgrown. There are still nights when sirens stitch the horizon. There are still men who prefer the old arrangements. There is still a ledger on his desk with columns that keep the world honest. But there is also a crib with teeth marks along the rail, and a garden where roses bloom too loudly, and a woman who once thought she would spend her life invisible and now cannot walk the kitchens without someone pressing fruit into her palms for the baby, for you. The plane that carried me once felt like an ending I slept through. This feels like waking. If there is a moral to any of it, it is not that love fixes monsters, or that monsters deserve love. It is simpler and harder. We are the sum of the choices we keep making after the first unforgivable one. He chose to unmake the cage and build a door. I chose to walk through it and stay. Together, we keep choosing. One day, when she is old enough to ask, we will tell our daughter the story. Not the headlines, not the whispers, but the truth. That her mother once fell asleep on a stranger's shoulder and woke in a life that was not hers. That her father once believed power could substitute for mercy. That both of them were wrong and both of them learned. We will tell her that fear is not the enemy, and neither is fire, so long as you know what you are trying to protect. And when she asks how it ends, we will show her. Not with a kiss stolen under chandeliers, not with a blade raised or lowered, not with a document burned or signed. It ends like this and begins like this every day. His hand finding mine in the dark. My voice finding his when the room is loud. A small body breathing between us, like a metronome set to future. 3 heartbeats, 1 world. Enough.